Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really ripping the cover off reality.
We really are.
We have pulled a truly massive stack of source material, all from the mind of Charles Stross. We're looking at his short fiction and novellas, written mostly between 1998 and 2008.
That's the period. A lot of it's collected in the volume Wireless. And, this isn't just standard science fiction.
No, not at all. This is
Yeah.
It's high concept espionage.
Yeah.
It's cosmological horror.
Yeah.
And it's all built into this weirdly familiar framework of like bureaucracy and Cold War paranoia.
That's exactly right. I mean, if you want a quick shortcut to understanding the secret, vast, and just often baffling machinery that might be underpinning reality, this is it.
And it's not just one kind of machinery.
No, it could be cosmic, it could be meticulously bureaucratic, or it could be deeply occult. These sources, they don't just give you an alternate history, they really challenge the whole concept of stable physics, stable memory.
Even stable government.
Exactly. We're going to be looking at everything from, the strange legislative paths that could have banned the internet, that's the unwirer movement, to these dense, chilling novellas like Palimpsest and Missile Gap that just completely redefine the scale of the universe.
So our mission today is to try and pull out the key insights from all of this. And we've broken it down into three, colossal themes for you.
Yeah, that's a good word for them.
First, we're going to be dealing with radical cosmological shifts and the idea of deep time. I'm talking about reality warping that makes, a billion Earths feel like a minor logistical problem.
Right. And then second, we dive into the bureaucracy of secret wars. This is where Cold War doctrine is desperately trying to manage genuinely Lovecraftian entities.
Which is a concept I love. And then finally, we'll look at societal engineering, future transformations, and some really hidden biological threats that, they suggest advanced alien life might just be highly territorial social insects.
It is a dizzying stack of material, for sure. And to really get it, you kind of have to start by accepting that the reality is, let's say it's merely a suggestion.
I like that. So let's start by shaking those foundations right away. Okay. Let's unpack this with Missile Gap. The sources, they just plunge us right into an alternate history. And it all centers on what the American intelligence apparatus called the move.
Right, the move. And in this timeline, the entire world changed completely. On October 2, 1962.
The middle of the Cold War.
The absolute height of it. And the change was profound. One day, things were normal. You had horizons, you had continents. The next day, the entire horizon, every single direction was just ocean.
Gone. Replaced by water.
Gone. And this is the pivotal moment. The sources describe an event where Earth, or at least the continents that the major powers were on, was just transplanted, lifted and placed onto this colossal artificial construct.
And they call this thing the disk.
The disk. It's not a planet. It's an engineered platter, a giant record.
And the size is the key insight here, right? Because when intelligence analysts started trying to map this new reality, the numbers they came back with are just, they're mind-bending. They completely dwarf humanity.
Completely. They figured out pretty quickly that the disk construct, it looked like a giant 45 RPM record, the center hole punched out.
Okay, so a massive flat plane with a hole in the middle.
A massive flat plane. And the geometry is, you can tell it's purposeful. That inner hole, which holds a star at its heart, that's the heat and light source for this whole thing, has a radius of 46 million miles.
Wait, 46 million miles? That's half an astronomical unit. It's half the distance from our Earth to our sun.
Exactly. And the outer edge is even bigger. It's estimated to be around 245 million miles out. 2.5 AUs.
Okay, so now for the fact that
Yeah.
it should stop you in your tracks. What's the total surface area?
Analysts combined what they could see with seismic data, and they determined the disk's estimated surface area is greater than 1 billion Earths.
A billion. A billion Earths. You can't even visualize that scale.
It's impossible. And here's the really maddening part. Despite this insane engineered scale, the local physics are familiar.
Right, the gravity's the same.
Surface gravity is exactly 1g, same as our original planet, which just confirms the whole thing is engineered, it's on purpose. And seismic reflections suggested there was a mirror-like rigid layer about 800 miles down.
So it's not a natural object, it is a machine. A massive alien machine.
No question. And that immensity immediately complicated everything, especially exploration.
I can imagine conventional ships or planes would be, useless?
Completely futile for anything beyond, scouting your own coastline. Right. But the Cold War rivalry, that was immediately transplanted onto this new impossible landscape.
That's such a crucial point. They're dealing with a world of 1 billion Earths, but their responses are still totally rooted in 1962 geopolitics.
That's all they know.
So let's look at the U.S. effort. How did they even begin to map this thing?
They deployed something called the NP-101 Persephone drone, which, it wasn't originally for reconnaissance. It was a derivative of the nuclear-powered D-SLAM Pluto missile.
A doomsday weapon.
A doomsday weapon designed for quick, fiery, long-range strikes, and they repurposed it for long-duration, supersonic mapping missions.
Repurpose is a very polite word for that.
It was a massive technological risk. The NP-101 was powered by a nuclear ramjet. It was meant to fly low and fast, and it could travel 50,000 miles a day.
Okay, that's fast.
It was crucial because it could penetrate millions of miles into the unknown before its fuel rod gave out. But, and this is a huge but, because it was adapted from a missile platform, the resolution was terrible.
How bad are we talking?
Limited to 1 nautical mile, so they were literally mapping 1 billion Earths with the equivalent of a blurry disposable camera. But it was the only thing they had that was fast enough.
So meanwhile, the Soviets, I'm guessing they didn't just sit back.
Oh, no. The Soviets matched them with characteristic over-engineering. We see the introduction of the Korolev. It was a nuclear-powered flying boat and a carrier operated by the Cosmonaut Corps.
A flying aircraft carrier.
And in this wonderful piece of bureaucratic absurdity, the Cosmonaut Corps was a branch of the Strategic Rocket Forces.
Of course it was. So this thing, the Korolev, was it as impressive as it sounds?
It was a monster, a true marvel of wartime engineering. Bigger than a cruiser, and it carried MiG-21 fighters. It was designed for scouting new oceans, new land masses, but it also served that immediate strategic need to just assert presence. Flying these vast distances before landing on this endless ocean that separated everything they knew from everything they didn't.
So both sides were just applying this terrifying, high-stakes nuclear tech to what is basically geographical discovery.
Basic map making, yeah.
And in their travels, they must have found some pretty strange stuff out there.
They did. They found these staggering geographical features that gave them hints about the intelligence that, engineered the disk in the first place. These things were called the radiators.
Radiators?
Yeah.
What are they?
They're described as Everest-high black fins, just thrusting out of the ocean depths right up into the stratosphere.
So giant walls in the middle of the ocean.
Exactly. And they separate the tropical heat zones from the subarctic chill of what they called the nether ocean. The sources say sailing between them was like being a cockroach crawling along a canyon between skyscrapers.
So they're clearly part of the machine.
Oh, absolutely. They're active cooling mechanisms. They're regulating the vast atmospheric heat distribution of this two-dimensional world. They're the guardians, the regulators of this interplanetary ocean.
And all of this leads directly to the core existential question that intelligence analysts, including Carl Sagan apparently, had to face.
Right. Who built this thing and why?
That's the billion-dollar question, or I guess the billion-Earth question.
Sagan, analyzing just the sheer effort involved in moving or building something of this size, he estimated a near certainty of encountering advanced alien civilizations, the abductors, the builders.
So exclusion was inescapable.
Utterly. The official line became, "We are not alone." And the strategic challenge then became, well, how do we apply human military policy, which is rooted in paranoia and deterrence, to a non-human intelligence?
I think I know the answer to that.
Yeah. They immediately pivoted to MAD, mutually assured destruction.
Of course.
It was just the default strategy for, as the source says, tool-using primates. They just applied it universally to any intelligence, no matter how advanced. The fact that the U.S. and the Soviets just continue their rivalry on this impossibly large construct, it proves that for humanity, MADI is more than a strategy. It's an instinct.
That sets the stage for a gigantic alternate reality. But our sources, they take us even further, way further, into the scope of deep time measured in, trillions of years?
Trillions, yeah. And this brings us to the Palimpsest novella and the organization that manages this engineered cosmos, an organization called the Stasis Program.
The Stasis Program, that sounds ominous.
It is perhaps the most frightening entity in this entire stack. Their mission is threefold. First, preventing human extinction.
Okay, sounds reasonable.
Second, preventing something they call transcendental obsolescence.
Which is?
Essentially, the species achieving a kind of escape velocity from reality and just self-destructing. And third, stopping the cosmos from unwinding into darkness. They manage human destiny over these truly immense timescales, far beyond our normal grasp of history.
And I'm guessing their methods are pretty extreme.
Extreme doesn't even begin to cover it. They are cosmic. They have extended the planet's lifespan by actively manipulating its star, its neighboring planets. They perform feats of literal cosmic engineering that just defy all the normal laws of planetary sustainability.
So tell me about the jewel in their crown, this thing called the long burn.
The long burn. So the Stasis realized our star, the sun, had a limited lifespan. A few billion years isn't enough for them, so they replaced its fusion core.
They did what?
They replaced it with a mass-crushing singularity. They call it a necrosun.
A black hole.
A controlled one, yeah. This singularity is then fueled by siphoning mass from brown dwarfs that are orbiting at the edge of the system. It creates this self-sustaining engine that provides trillions of years of light and heat. It allows civilization to persist far beyond the expected heat death of the universe.
But engineering a star, that has to require sacrifices on a planetary level. Which planets did they use?
Oh, the inner planets were just dismantled for parts.
Or for parts?
Mercury, for instance, has already been entirely dismantled. They used it to provide the high-density control mechanisms needed to manage the necrostar's accretion disk. Venus supplies what they call mass tugs gravitational machinery for the delicate orbital adjustments that keep Earth safe over such deep time.
So the Stasis program sees the solar system not as a series of worlds, but as a parts bin for Earth's survival.
Exactly, for Earth's indefinite survival.
And Earth itself isn't immune to this, is it? Tell us about Pangaea Ultima.
No, Earth's future involves repeated, radical physical manipulation. It eventually converges into a single equatorial supercontinent called Pangaea Ultima for specific survival reasons. It optimizes tectonic stability and heat distribution under the necrostar. After this happens, the Stasis then freezes the planet temporarily. They pack its entire atmosphere into snow beyond Neptune.
They pack the atmosphere away.
To preserve it from radiation flares and other cosmic threats. Then, these vast, powerful engines called momentum shuttles, they eventually crank the Earth back toward the necrostar for the next round of what they call reseedings. This cyclical manipulation it's history engineering at the most profound level imaginable.
It's horrifyingly pragmatic.
Okay.
And the agents who run this program, they must be just as radically disconnected from our reality.
Completely. They operate outside conventional history, and the way they recruit new agents is brutal. It's called the shared atrocity protocol.
Shared atrocity.
That's where this high concept becomes utterly chilling. To join, new agents must kill their own grandfather.
Why? Why that specific act? Why not just brainwashing?
Because the Stasis relies on what they call a causal discontinuity. By performing an act that creates a massive paradox in your own timeline, eliminating the causal link to your own birth, you're essentially inoculated against the past.
So you can exist outside of time?
Functionally, yes. It allows them to rewrite history without their own existence collapsing into a contradiction.
They need to be free of history because they're constantly rewriting it, creating what the sources call palimpsests.
Exactly. And when history is overwritten, the old events don't just vanish, they become unhistory, and they're stored in the library.
The library. Let's talk about that. It's not just a building with books.
Not even close. The library is a colossal informational structure. It's built on something called memory diamond, and it riddles the entire continental upper crust of Pangaea Ultima. It contains all recorded human history and all the unhistory. The plausible lies, the countless alternate lives, all the stuff that never happened, now just causally unconnected with reality.
Memory diamond, what is that?
It's an engineered material. 1 molar weight of this stuff stores 6 times 10 to the 23rd bits of data.
That's an insane amount of information.
The library holds trillions of years of recorded human history, plus all those countless alternate routes, all just waiting to be accessed. But the mechanism for protecting this data is what truly blew me away. They use the Cryptozoic era.
The era before complex life. Why?
It's a point of extreme clarity and necessity for the Stasis. To avoid contamination, to prevent historical changes in the library from leaking into the current reality and causing, unforeseen causal disruptions, the library relays all this vast data backward in time, specifically to the Cryptozoic.
Because there's nothing there to contaminate.
Exactly. It's the only time entirely free of human cultural or biological influence. It creates this secure informational buffer outside of history itself before they transmit it forward again for compilation and analysis.
The ultimate implication here is that the Stasis believes true safety requires total control. Total control over time, matter, and consciousness. They're managing the species through serial extinctions and cosmic manipulation.
They see themselves as shepherds, shepherds of the species, ensuring that no matter what horrors or entropic decay the cosmos throws at us, the idea of humanity, all its history, all its unhistory, will survive until the final library is compiled at the very end of time.
It's a frighteningly impersonal and effective form of security.
It is.
The sheer scope of this. 1 billion Earths on a platter, an organization rewriting the sun's lifespan. It's truly something. It's almost disorienting. And it's astonishing that after grappling with that, humanity's most paranoid instincts remain fixated on the tiny bureaucratic details of the Cold War.
It's what we do.
So let's pivot to Section 2. Our cosmic scale meets government red tape and cult threats.
So we shift now. We're going from cosmic engineering to applied computational demonology, specifically focusing on the intersection of conventional warfare and occult threats during a very, very chilling Cold War. This is drawn heavily from a colder war.
In this narrative, it basically posits that the Cold War we know was completely overshadowed by an unseen metaphysical arms race.
Completely. This is where we learn that the original Cold War doctrine was utterly transformed by non-conventional weaponry. The Soviet Union, for instance, maintains a threat that they captured from the Nazis at the end of World War II. It's known as Project Koschei.
Project Koschei, what is it?
Koschei is described in intelligence briefings as a sleeping nightmare.
Okay.
It's also called a Cthulhu entity or weakly godlike agency, and it lies undead and sleeping in a bunker in Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, of all places. That gives you a chilling sense of foreknowledge in the timeline, doesn't it?
It really does. And the key is that this entity, it operates on principles that are outside of conventional physics. And that necessitates an entirely new type of deterrent.
So, if the Soviets have a godlike entity in a box, how does the U.S. respond? You can't just point a standard ICBM at it.
You can't. And this led to the development of a new deterrence policy, MED 2.0. Their primary countermeasure was the B-39 Peacemaker Force, which was tasked with maintaining something called an XKP-LUDO capability.
XKP-LUDO, what's that?
The XKP-LUDO is the definition of a total weapon. It's designed specifically to address the unique properties of occult threats. It's a heavily modified Navajo missile, a nuclear-powered ramjet designed to fly at Mach 3.
Okay, so it's fast.
Very. It drops megaton-range bombs initially. But here's the technical detail that really matters. Once its conventional payload is gone, it seeks out the final target project, Koschei, and it ejects its own reactor core.
It ejects the reactor core. Why? That sounds like an environmental catastrophe squared, even by Cold War standards.
Because conventional fission or fusion energy isn't guaranteed to deter, let alone destroy, an entity that exists in a partially non-Euclidean reality.
So a nuke might not even work.
It might not. The source material suggests that the occult threat, Koschei, isn't necessarily killed by pure blast force. It needs a disruption of its biological or maybe its causal fabric. The ejected core-raining molten plutonium on the target, it provides two things at once.
Which are?
Extreme radiation density and a concentrated, high-temperature physical mess that disrupts the entity's ability to maintain its connection to our physical reality.
So it's a targeted biological and causal kill mechanism, not just a big explosion.
Exactly. It's not just a high-explosive deterrent. And the source states, chillingly, that 12 PL-LUDO-class missiles are pointed at Chernobyl day and night.
Wow. Okay, so beyond just this one big existential threat, the sources confirm the Soviets were already deploying occult weaponry tactically, right?
Oh, yeah. During parades, they openly demonstrated possession of these devastating units they called servitors. They were operating under the classification Gold July Bujum.
And intelligence had to scramble to figure out what these things were.
And how many there were. Estimates suggested 288 units, though this was treated with, the necessary Cold War caution. We know the Soviets notoriously inflated their capabilities.
Right, like flying the same bombers over Red Square again and again.
Exactly. The same 20 Bear bombers to suggest a fleet of 240. But regardless of the true number, the operational capabilities of the servitors were horrifyingly confirmed in combat.
And what was their signature? What did they do?
They left a unique, devastating signature, a 4-meter-wide assimilation track. They caused total molecular breakdown of organic matter.
So they just erased things.
Erased organic things. They were deployed in Afghanistan and they could depopulate areas rapidly. The calculation was less than 5,000 seconds for a full sweep. And crucially, they proved effective even against heavily armed resistance, like the Mujahideen with their heavy machine guns and RPGs.
You can't shoot something that operates by molecular disassembly.
You can't.
Yeah.
And this deployment was a clear violation of the Dresden Agreement, which was this attempt to put some restraints on the use of these metaphysical weapons. But the situation was just escalating globally. It proved that once you introduce these tools, they don't stay contained between the two superpowers.
Right, they leak.
Yeah, exactly. And the focus shifts to the Middle East. The Iraqi Mukhabarat, the secret police, they were attempting to manipulate an operational gateway located in Basra.
Trying to get their own.
They were aiming to summon another weakly godlike creature.
Mhm.
And this is where local politics and the global occult arms race just collided violently.
So how did the regional powers respond to that?
Iran, fearing the Soviets' influence and their use of these tools nearby, responded drastically. They threatened to purchase nuclear weapons from Mossad.
From Israel?
Yeah, specifically citing a factory at Dimona. And their concern was deeply framed in religious terms. They weren't just worried about physics. They were viewing the threat through the lens of the abode of the Eater of Souls.
So this secret activity, this looming transfer of WMDs driven by fear of godlike entities, it just poured gasoline on the fire.
It escalated tensions so rapidly, and it contributed directly to a global conflict that began on October 1st.
What's chilling about this narrative is that sense of inevitability. The Americans high up in the chain of command, like the colonel in the EOB basement, they realize the conflict was no longer merely ideological.
No, it was a battle between forces that the U.S. only understood in terms of deterrence. And that led to devastating first strikes along the eastern seaboard and in the Donbass basin. They were applying the logic of human military bureaucracy to non-human reality-warping threats.
And that focus on the bureaucratic handling of an existential crisis, that brings us perfectly to the internal British perspective, to the laundry.
Yes, courtesy of Down on the Farm, the laundry organization.
So the laundry is basically MI6, but instead of tracking spies, they're the branch of the British secret state that defends the realm from, and I'm quoting here, the scum of the multiverse.
It's a fantastic premise.
And their key weapon is applied computational demonology.
And the entire organization is governed by these two principles that really highlight the strange synthesis of high-level math and supernatural fear.
What are they?
First, the basic rule of bureaucracy. The first law of bureaucracy is show no curiosity.
Because volunteering leads to bad things.
Because volunteering for anything will invariably lead to an encounter with something terrifying that you will regret. And second, the operating premise is that magic is simply a branch of applied mathematics.
So the agents they recruit are computer science graduates.
Exactly. The supernatural threat is a coding problem.
And we get an inside look at their maximum security facility, saying Hilda's lunatic asylum, the funny farm.
The funny farm, it's where they secure agents who have succumbed to reality-altering afflictions. And they have names that hint at the intellectual danger they represent.
They're named after famous mathematicians.
Long-term residents, yeah.
Yeah.
Turing, Gödel, Cantor, Mandelbrot. They're stable, they're communicative, but they're profoundly dangerous because their minds have glimpsed the computational secrets of the universe. Their affliction is Kranzberg syndrome.
Okay, let's clarify Kranzberg syndrome. What are the symptoms and what causes it?
The symptoms are pretty clear: ataxia, heightened affect, and severe brain lesions in the prefrontal lobes. The source describes them as looking like Swiss cheese.
Wow.
And these are caused by prolonged exposure to high thumb fields, areas of intense magical energy. But the theory of its origin is the most terrifying part.
Tell us about the theory of self-summoning.
One of the prevailing theories suggests that if you think too hard about certain computational demonology problems, if you try to solve the high-level math that defines reality, you can cause a minor summoning right inside your own head.
In your brain.
In your brain. And this results in microscopic lumps of neural tissue being literally sucked right out by the complex geometry you're calculating. The agent's consciousness is consumed by the calculation itself. It leaves them functionally insane, but still capable of high-level math, like Gödel, who is seen drawing these protective pentagrams on the walls with astonishing precision.
So the security measures at the farm must be tailored to that specific kind of threat. They're bizarrely specific.
Oh, they are. Inmate areas must be kept power-free, but you also see bans on things like Lego and Meccano.
Why Lego?
This is critical for understanding applied demonology. Magic, being math, relies on specific geometry and probability calculations. Lego and Meccano are banned because they allow the inmates to construct dangerous, non-Euclidean geometries, which, when you combine that with their heightened intellect and thaumic energy, could instantly breach reality barriers or cause an uncontrolled summoning.
And what about board games? Cluedo is banned.
Non-deterministic board games like Cluedo are risky because they introduce probability spaces, unpredictable outcomes, and those can be exploited by these math-obsessed minds to destabilize localized reality.
Even the staff, the nurses, they reflect this high-tech magical threat. They're not human.
No, the nurses, like Nurse Gearbox or Nurse Flywheel, are automated hydraulic delay line controlled sisters, and they're equipped with something called thaumaturgic thixometers.
Which are detection devices.
Yeah, for measuring and responding to high thom fields.
Ah.
They have to be automated because no human staff member could safely survive constant exposure to the reality warping energy coming off the residents.
But the asylum's core control system is maybe the most dangerous inmate of all, the matron.
Matron, yeah. It started life as an IBM 1602 mainframe, but it functions by front-ending a trapped class for lesser nameless manifestation.
An actual extra-dimensional entity.
An actual entity. It's enslaved to provide the computational horsepower needed to run the facility, detect threats, and manage containment.
And what is the core conflict surrounding matron?
The enchained entity that provides matron's intelligence constantly seeks freedom. It wants to go walk about in our world. And to do that, it needs an undamaged human brain as a host.
And the inmates know this.
The inmates, the mathematically brilliant but reality-damaged residents, are exploiting matron's wish for freedom. They're sending out messages about the proposed sale of the farm leaking strategic information to make the point that closing the facility is a guaranteed way to release a devastating entity into the human population.
And so even the insane mathematicians still understand strategic communication and political leverage.
They do. It's this incredible weaving together of cosmic threat, historical paranoia, and the bureaucratic banality of trying to manage Cthulhu entities with spreadsheets.
That really is. Okay, let's pivot now and look at how engineered societies and radical biological change can shape human life, moving away from high-level warfare and into social structure.
So this section, it really reveals that these deep structural changes, whether they're political, technological, or biological, they force human life into entirely new and often very uncomfortable forms. And they frequently remove individual agency for the sake of survival or for perceived efficiency.
We can start with a potent alternate history from Unwirer. Here, the core structural change wasn't an alien invasion or an occult war. It was just legislative.
It's so mundane in comparison, but the effects are huge. The narrative posits a legal environment where open internet access became as illegal as cannabis.
And how did that happen?
It resulted from aggressive anti-piracy laws proposed in the 1990s that were actually passed and enforced, which, isn't that far-fetched.
No, it's not. So this created a completely inverted digital landscape.
Totally. The protagonist, Roscoe, is an unwirer, an underground activist who illegally creates open networks using patched-in dishes and repeaters. And the perception of these activists was radically split, depending on where you were.
Right. So in Europe, they were seen as heroes.
Heroes of economic liberty, yeah. In places like France, open device and services markets accounted for nearly half the GDP. But in the U.S., the enforcement was brutal. They were viewed as crooks, pirates, abettors of terrorists, and they were constantly fighting this aggressive surveillance state.
This pervasive surveillance state was the dark legacy of that collapsed, restricted internet age. And the key detail here is the enforcement mechanism, isn't it?
It is. Enthusiastic legislators demanded keyword monitoring of absolutely everything within range of a network terminal, and this led to the deployment of self-replicating bots, some described as being the size of fleas.
So surveillance becomes ubiquitous and automated across the whole country.
Everywhere. And the state's tactics against the unwirers were extreme. They were designed not just to convict, but to make people disappear. They used special FEMA courthouses with seed records. They routinely fabricated evidence.
Planning things like kiddie porn or meth labs.
Exactly, to neutralize the unwirers. And this resulted in secret trials and these deep incarceration holes.
That fabrication is a major point of insight. I mean, why fabricate evidence if you already control the entire infrastructure?
Because the state needed to completely discredit the individuals. They had to ensure zero public sympathy. They needed to frame them as morally repulsive criminals, not as political dissidents fighting for network freedom. Roscoe himself operated with intense paranoia. He cites the example of a woman, Caitlin Delaney in Washington state, who was framed with a meth lab and kiddie porn after being shot. The entire system was engineered to neutralize anyone disrupting the controlled network.
Yet, the sources detail a breakthrough. The free net movement actually achieved a critical mass. How did they overcome such an entrenched, violent, and technologically overwhelming state?
They succeeded through just relentless disruption and the sheer economic necessity of open information. The breakthrough led to a major legislative shift. You see proposed bills to fund DARPA grants to study TCP/IP.
So forcing the state to fund the very open architecture they had banned.
The irony is rich. They also repealed terrorism statutes on basic network activity. And, crucially, they implemented compulsory licenses on media, which disrupted the entire copyright business model that had fueled the restrictions in the first place.
So this really demonstrates the power of social inertia versus legislative control.
It does. The foundational human need to communicate and innovate, it eventually overcame the state's aggressive attempts to restrict it. The system was just too brittle to survive being choked off.
Okay, so moving from legislative challenges to biological ones, we see these bizarre post-collapse bioecosystems in Rogue Farm and the indigenous threats on the disk in Voyage. Let's go back to the disk for a moment and the implications of these mock termites.
Right. On the transplanted continents of the disk, the colonists are facing indigenous life forms that strongly suggest the builders of the disk were not humanoids. Entomologists in a place called New Iowa discovered these mock termite mounds.
And describe the threat that these insects posed.
The mounds contained this squirming mass of black and white things, and they were ruled by a queen the size of a human forearm.
That's big.
And they were observed at a devastating concentration of 12 mounds per acre, which means vast tracts of land were already claimed. They are poisonous to other insectoida and posed a clear, deadly threat to any human expansion.
And this feeds into the intelligence analysis about the identity of the abductors, the builders of the disk.
It does. Analysts speculated that the vast majority of advanced aliens on the disk are likely social insects using extremely advanced biological engineering. They control their own genetic code to build tailored organisms.
Which makes them aggressive and territorial.
Very. And critically, because their ecosystem is decentralized and bioengineered, it's not reliant on factories or conventional military hubs. Conventional human military solutions are deemed completely ineffective against them.
So you can't just bomb them.
Right. They may even have cleared some of the other empty Earths of previous human populations using biological tools instead of missiles.
That shifts the whole paradigm of alien contact from, technological warfare to biological ecosystem management. Which is a much harder threat to counter.
Much harder. And we see even stranger engineered life closer to home in Rogue Farm, which is set in a dramatically changed future England.
This is a view of society after an immense catastrophe, right?
Yeah, a major population crash following a subarctic deep freeze caused by the West Antarctic ice shelf collapse. Survival here relies on extreme, localized adaptation and biological fusion.
Tell us about the Farm Collective.
The collective is a formidable, large entity. It sometimes features half a dozen human components that have been subsumed into it.
Subsumed, so they're part of it.
They're part of it. They're capable of something called farm fugue, a type of collective shared consciousness for maximizing resource management. They are physically massive, already the size of antique heavy tanks, and they smell specifically of yeast and gasoline.
Yeast and gasoline.
Which reflects their dependence on fermentation and engineered fuels. The individual identity is largely erased in favor of this eusocial collective entity that's needed for survival.
And the centerpiece of this survival strategy is a terrifying biological weapon disguised as a tree, the stage trees.
This really highlights the ultimate cynical trade-off of this post-collapse society. They turn basic biological resources into explosives. The stage trees are genetically hacked pine trees. They're engineered to nitrate the cellulose in their cell walls just before the cells die.
Which effectively turns the tree itself into nitrocellulose.
Non-cotton, yeah.
Nitrocellulose is highly flammable. It's used as an explosive, as a propellant. What is the collective using this highly dangerous, unstable biomaterial for?
They use it as explosive and propulsion material for space travel, specifically for resource gathering missions like expeditions to Jupiter.
So they're riding explosions in space.
Essentially. And the act of using this propulsion is inherently destructive. It requires them to harvest and ignite these massive biobombs. The sources warn that the detonation of one of these stage trees can instantly toast 100 hectares of land.
It's a cynical, necessary risk. Their survival depends on creating these localized, apocalyptic events just to escape a dying planet.
That juxtaposition individual consciousness giving way to a collective entity that needs to detonate living trees to travel is a devastating portrait of future necessity.
It connects back to that theme of eusocial survival over paranoid individualism.
Exactly. They are willing to sacrifice identity and massive tracts of land for long-term collective resource gain.
Okay, finally, let's wrap up this section with a devastatingly cynical analysis of alien communication from the source Maxos. This is a final, highly unexpected insight into universal intelligence.
Yeah, Maxos. They stand for microwave artifacts of xenobiological origin. These are clearly intelligent communications received from deep space.
And the initial attempts were to decode them, right?
Yeah, standard symbolic encoding, linguistic analysis, pattern recognition. But the semantic linguistic payload proved completely impenetrable, refractory, until researchers applied an extremely unconventional cultural variable.
And that variable was the Nigerian Fraud Office database. Why that specific terrestrial database?
The researchers, I think out of desperation or maybe cosmic despair, tried matching the alien communication structure against the complex, highly specific patterns found in terrestrial financial fraud schemes. They used Bayesian analysis, a form of probability inference, to see if the patterns of deception, of avarice, of promise of riches matched anything they knew.
And the results?
They reached the conclusion that the incomprehensibly alien Maxo payloads were, and this is the quote, dismayingly familiar.
So the implication is?
The implication, driven by matching these alien communication patterns with highly complex confidence schemes from the Nigerian database, suggested that the most complex cognitive structure in the universe still leads to advanced forms of organized deception and financial swindling.
That is a profound note of cosmic cynicism to end on. It suggests that the ultimate message from beyond the stars isn't spiritual enlightenment or grand scientific theory, but a universal scam.
It does. The analysis resulted in and we've witnessed how engineered history, through the Stasis program, attempts to shepherd humanity across trillions of years. The complexity is staggering, but the underlying motives, fear, control, survival, they remain fundamentally recognizable.
The sources repeatedly highlight the danger of the unfamiliar, particularly when it contrasts with human individuality. Whether it's an aggressive, biologically engineered alien race like the mock termites, or an enslaved supernatural entity trying to break protocol.
Or even the unseen consequences of our own political actions echoing across deep time. The message seems to be that the most dangerous threats are the ones we just can't categorize.
The core conflict, then, from the fate of the discolonists to the stasis agents, it really does seem to be individual human consciousness, what the sources call paranoid individualism, versus these eusocial or hive mind entities.
Absolutely. The stasis, the mock termites, the farm collective, they all demonstrate that in the face of deep time or catastrophic pressure, the collective often survives by demanding the complete surrender of the individual.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought these sources leave us with. And it's driven entirely by the philosophy of the Stasis program.
Right. The stasis exists solely to preserve the total history of the human species. And they believe that we need to be periodically reduced to a rump of a few thousand illiterate hunter-gatherers just to thrive again after each extinction cycle.
So here's the question. If the ultimate goal of preserving humanity requires erasing personal history through something like the shared atrocity protocol, engineering extinction events like strategic Yellowstone detonations, and constantly rewriting reality to maximize survival, does that ultimate species-level security strip humanity of its essential, chaotic individual identity?
Or, and this is the really chilling part, does survival at this scale fundamentally require the destruction of what we think makes us human?
A profound question for you to ponder as you navigate your own reality palimpsest or not. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.